Welcome back to the LangGraph in one shot. In this video, we're going to learning the LangGraph from scratch by creating two awesome projects. If you wanted to learn Python, data science, machine learning, and GenAI, subscribe my YouTube channel. So let's begin our tutorial. So what is the LangGraph? LangGraph is a framework for creating applications using graph-based workflow. LangGraph is a graph itself, just like a DSA. In graph, we have the node and the edges. Each node represents a function or computational step in the LangGraph, as well as an edge define the flow between this node based on certain condition. Using LangGraph, we can creating the multi-AI agent system. So what is the multi-AI agent? Multi-AI agent is nothing but a collection of artificial intelligence that work together to solve one real-world problem. Whereas LangGraph is a powerful library within the LangChain ecosystem. Using LangChain and the LangGraph, you can creating the multi-AI agent LLM applications. So what is the key features of the LangGraph? LangGraph have two key features. One is called the graph structure, another one is called the state management. It's also have the flexibility as well. In the graph, you have the node and the edges. Node is nothing but the building blocks of work, and edges is guiding the flow of information and control. In this section, you can see here having a start node and also having one end node. And in the middle, you have some kind of agent which can help to assistant tools, enter the right sequences, write assistant, write sensitive tools, live with sequences, and also having some conditional edges. And this graph is nothing but the heart of the LangChain design. So what is the state management in the LangGraph? In state management in the LangGraph, it ensures the data flow and the context flow simultaneously between the nodes. It allows the developer to track the state of the applications at each step of the workflow. In the each step of the workflow, you can access the state. That might include some kind of point, just like the conversational history. You can access them, or the contextual data, or the internal variable. You can access it easily. That's called the state management in the LangGraph. Now we're going to building here our first use case application that's called the text analysis. How are you going to do the text analysis? Text summarizations as well as the entity extraction. Let's go on the Google Column and start the coding part. Okay, so let's have a look. Our first use case is called the text analysis pipeline, and you're going to do three tasks on here. One is called the text classifications. We're going to classify the text based on the news, categories, or the block, or the research, or others. And after that, you're going to using here the entity extraction, just called the name entity recognitions. It can be the person, it can be the organization, or it can be the locations. Then you're going to summarize our text that is given by the user. Now what I can do first, I'm going to importing here the LangGraph and LangChain and the LangChain core. But before that, told install those library. So I'm going to using here the pip command. Let's say pip install LangChain first, because LangGraph is working itself inside the LangChain. LangChain, then you need to install the LangChain core. Then you need to install the LangChain community. Let's say LangChain underscore community and the LangGraph. That's our desired library. Okay, and those libraries required in order to actually building here our first project, text analysis. We're going to create the pipeline for that. I'm going to go slowly, and most of them comment that I speak too fast, so I am going to speak slowly now. Okay, so let's importing first important library called the typing. Okay, so from typing, I'm going to importing first the typedict. Let's say type dictionary. So this type dictionary will help us while creating the state. Okay, so we have some step of the text processing pipeline. So let's taking one text. Let's taking one text first, and I'm going to, let's say, building the text pre-processing pipeline. It's a pipeline. So first one is called the state and initialize the large language model. So it should be the define. Let's say define state and the initialize the large language model. That's our first step. Then the second step, we are going to define our node functions. Define the node function. See, LangGraph itself one graph or graph flow types of applications or graph flow types of library. Using LangGraph, we need to creating here the node and the edges as well. So second, we're going to define the node functions. The third, we are going to create the tools and the build the workflow. Let's say create tools, let's say tools, and build, let's say build workflow, let's say workflow. And the fourth step, you're going to visualize the workflow, let's say visualize the workflow, let's say workflow. And after that, you're going to testing it out, let's say testing it out, let's say testing, okay, testing the pipeline, let's say pipeline, okay, pipeline. My caps lock is working, it's not working. I need to using here the shift key, that's why. Okay, let's make it state capital and initialize capital I, and this is the create tools and build workflow and visualize the workflow. Let's make it W should be capital. So those are the steps I need to follow first in order to creating here one LangGraph applications. So in order to define the state, for defining the state, you're going to using here the type dict, and also you're going to importing here the list. Why list? I will told you later on. Okay, and after that, we're simply going to importing here the LangGraph, our desired library. That's a LangGraph dot graph. I'm going to importing here the state graph. Okay, let's say state graph. So this state graph actually help us to creating the graph. Okay, state graph for that. We define the state, and the state graph help us to create create the workflow and visualize this. Okay, and after that, you can need to giving here the AND block. Okay, AND is nothing but the AND of the node of the LangGraph. Then after that, you need to importing here the prompt template from the LangChain. Let's say from LangChain dot prompts. I'm going to importing here the prompt template. Let's say prompt template. Let's PROMPT prompt. Oh, sorry, prompt template. It will give the auto suggestions prompt template. And after that, I'm going to importing here the human messages, because we're going to interact with the human messages with the AI messages. So we need to import it from LangChain. That's a LangChain dot schema. It should be schema. We're going to importing here the human message. Let's say human message. ओके मैं बहुत स्लोली जा रहा हूँ, बहुत स्लोली जा रहा हूँ, क्योंकि ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक है, मुझे कवर करना पड़ेगा बस इसलिए. Then I'm going to importing here the Merrimaid draw method. Why Merrimaid draw method? Because you need to show the graph flow, start node to the end node, and middle of them we have some kind of node functions. So let's say from LangChain, let's issue the LangChain, okay, LangChain core dot runnable, okay, runnables dot graph. We're going to importing here the Merrimaid, okay, it should be the Merrimaid draw method, right? And also from Python dot display, I'm going to importing here the display. Okay, so हमने यहाँ पर क्या किया, हमको कुछ पाइपलाइन हमको बिल्ड करना है, इसलिए फर्स्ट हमको स्टेट को डिफाइन करना पड़ेगा, इसके बाद हमारा लार्ज लैंग्वेज मॉडल को इनिशियलाइज करना पड़ेगा. इसलिए हमने क्या किया, टाइप डिट को यहाँ पर इंपोर्ट किया टाइपिंग मॉड्यूल से. इसके बाद हमको नोट को डिफाइन करना पड़ेगा. सो नोट में क्या होता है, नोट इज इटसेल्फ इज नथिंग बट अ कंपोनेंट ऑफ द ग्राफ. ग्राफ के कंपोनेंट है जो यहाँ पर स्टेट ग्राफ्स के मदद से हम उस वर्कफ्लो को क्रिएट करेंगे. उसके बाद एंड नोट हम यहाँ पर दे दिया, क्योंकि ग्राफ में एंड नोट भी होता है. आई मीन फ्लो चार्ट में स्टार्ट नोट होता है, एंड नोट होता है, मिडल में कुछ नोट फंक्शन होता है. इसके बाद हमने क्या किया, प्रॉम्प्ट टेम्पलेट की इंपोर्ट किया, क्योंकि जो एआई है, जो लार्ज लैंग्वेज मॉडल है, वो प्रॉम्प्ट इंजीनियर के ऊपर काम करता है बस. इसके बाद हमने क्या किया, ह्यूमन मैसेज को इंपोर्ट किया, क्योंकि हम ह्यूमन मैसेज के द्वारा एआई मैसेज से हम कन्वर्सेशन स्टार्ट करेंगे, इसलिए हमको ह्यूमन मैसेज स्कीमा से एक्चुअली इंपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा, जो लैंगचेन के अंदर भी है. इसके बाद हमको मेरमेड ड्रॉ मेथड हमको यूज करना पड़ेगा, सो दैट वी कैन डिस्प्ले आवर ग्राफ इन आवर नोटबुक. And for that, you're going to using this IPython to display, import, display, and the image. So those are the important libraries required in order to building this application that's called text analysis pipeline. मैं बहुत slowly जा रहा हूँ. Now see, we need to define the state. Okay, we need to define the state. So how many state we have? If I go up, let's try to removing this output so that I don't need to scroll it down more. So first is called the text classification. That is nothing but our state. That's why classification is one of our state. Then second state is called the entity extraction. Okay, you know about the name entity extraction. You can go on the Google and search for the name entity name entity recognitions. What is the name entity recognitions? I search in Google name entity recognitions. Name entity recognitions, also called NER, is a natural language processing technique that identify and classify names entities in unstructured text. That's when it will identify the name of the thing. It can be the person, it can be the organizations, it can be the locations. So that's why we're using here this entity recognition functions on here in our text classification pipeline. So there's our state number two. It's called the entity abstractions. The third one is called the summarization. That's mean we have three state and also one state. It's called the text itself, because text itself is nothing but a state. So we need to creating his state. So how can we create the state? We can create a class for that. So let's create a class. Let's say create class state. So which one? Enumerate this type dict. So that's why we actually importing here this type dictionary. Why type dictionary? Because see our class, I mean our state is nothing but 4. Okay, we need to also give the data type for that. So that's why you give it here in the form of dictionary with the type and the value. That's why you import here the type dict. So what I can do now, we're simply going to give it here text. Let's say text, and this is nothing but a string. And after that, what we have the classification. Let's say classification. Okay, this is also one string. This is also one string. Sorry, my runtime is disconnected because Wi-Fi connection is lost. Okay, classification is a string because it will classify them. It is a research-based topic, is a blog topic, or it is other topics, other news topics. So that's why it's nothing but a simple string. Then after that, we have the entities. We have the entities. Let's N-T-I-T-I-E-S. Okay, entities is nothing but one list. One list. Why list? Because it can be person, it can be the organizations, it can be the locations. I mean, it have certain types of value, so you can put it inside a list. So that's why importing here the list from the typing. Now we can pass it inside a list, and inside this list it should be the string. It should be the string because it is string types of data. Then we have the summary. We have the summary that is called the state in the LangGraph. We need to define the state of that. Now after that, you can join them and create one graph of the workflow so that you can access the value from each of every the node. We can access them. Okay, so that's why LangGraph is using this graph method to access all of the informations from the graph. Okay, now I'm simply going to shift enter. Now we need to initialize the large language model. So this is nothing but our define the state. So you can give it to here. Let's say define a state. So that's our define state and the large language model initializations. So we can, let's say we can give it here. Let's say bold. Let's say first number 1 is done. Define a state and the initialize the large language model. Now we need to initialize the large language model. So for that, you're using here the Grok Cloud. Why Grok Cloud? You can using here the OpenAI as well, because I don't have the subscriptions to the OpenAI, I mean GPT model. So that's why I'm going to using the free one, because Grok Cloud give you the free version of the large language model. You can access it, and it's also fast. This is the interface of the Grok Cloud. Just you need to go on that and create one account, and then using your Google account. So this is nothing but the playground of the Grok Cloud. If you go on here, you can see here several types of model are available. And if you go into these documentations and inside the sections called the models, you can see here productions model by Meta, by Google. You can use any of them. I prefer to using here this Llama model, Llama 3.3 17B versatile by Meta. Okay, so you can also get started on the playground and you can see how quick it will give me the response. Let's say what is LangGraph? Let's say LangGraph. Okay, and click on submit, and you can see how quickly it will give the response, how fast. So that's why you need to using this Grok Cloud, and it's free to use. And you can see LangGraph is a research project at the University of California, and some of the key features of the LangGraph include its actually language connections, then graph-based data structure. You can see then multilingual lexicon, then this one, and grammar and syntax. Okay, so that's we are going to be using here the LangGraph to creating here our multi AI agent system, because LangGraph is widely used to creating here the multi AI agent system. It's nothing but a collection of artificial intelligence that solves the real world problem. So you need to go on this API key sections, and after that you can just click on create API key, just give one name and copy the API key from here. It's really free to use. Well, so I copied the API key. Now what I can do, I need to also install one library that's called the Grok Cloud. So for that, I can using here pip install, not the Grok Cloud, it should be the LangChain Grok, LangChain _Grok. Using this one, we can access the API key from the Grok Cloud API. Okay, so I am simply going to import it first. So let's say from langchain underscore grok, I'm going to importing here the chat grok. Okay, let's say chat grok. Now inside the chat grok, we can initialize our model and also our large language model. Okay, that's our model is called our llama 3.3 17b versatile. That's our nothing but our model, right? So what I can do is simply going to, let's say LLMs equal to let's say using here the chat grok, and inside that you can passing here the first temperature. Okay, if you go on the grok cloud, you can see the one actually is features called the temperature. You can set it to 0. Then we have the grok api underscore key, and I'm going to pasting here the api key. Okay, don't use this one. I am going to deleting this out after recording this video. So I'm going to giving here the model name. Let's say model name is equal to, let's say llama, and then you can, let's give it a 3.3, and let's say 17 billion versatile. Let's say versatile. That's it. Okay, 3.3 17b versatile. That's our model name. And let's say result is equal to llm dot invoke, and then let's give it here one text based on this your query. Let's say what is large language model. Let's say what is LLMs. Okay, what is LLM, and it is stored inside the results. Okay, we can simply go to printing this out. Let's say print the result. That's it. It will calling this data from this API, and you can see content. LLM stand for large language model. It refers to a type of artificial intelligence designed to process and understand human language at a large scale. Okay, so you can see it's having our content. So if I using here dot content, let's say dot content, then you can see it will just give the content. Okay, just give the content. Okay, it just give the content. It having some key feature you can see here: language understanding, the text generations that you're working on, that conversational capabilities, knowledge retrieval. It's also called the RAC. Okay, virtual assistant, content generations, language translation, and the sentiment analysis. You're also going to actually deploy on this one. Okay, now what I can do, we need to defining here the node. That's our second step. So let's try to go on here and clear the outputs so that it look clear. So our second one is called the define the node functions. Define the node functions. So what is nothing but the node functions? Node function क्या होता है? देखो, when building the graph, if you see that, we have one start node, we have one end node, and in middle of that we have the text classifications, we have the summarizations, we have the entity extractions. So those are nothing but the node. In a graph, we have the node, and each of the node is joining to by the edge. So you need to creating the node first, then we can join them, right? So what I can do, we need to define the node functions. So we have the three types of node functions. One is the called the classification node. Then we have the entity extraction node. Then we have the summarization node. There's other three node. Okay, there's other three node. So let's I'll see you one images so that you can understand it clearly. Okay, see this image. We have one start node, we have the classification node, we have the entity extractions, we have the summarizations, we have one end node. So this is called the node in graph, and this is called the edge. Okay, so we need to creating this node. That's called the classification node, the entity extractions, the summarization node, and after that we making this classification to our entry node, and the summarization tone should be our end node. That's it. That is called the graph. We're going to creating a simple graph in the LangGraph using LangGraph. Okay, so let's define our first node called the classification node. Let's say def classification underscore node. So it will taking one state, because in the state our value, our all the value for the graph is stored so that you can access it from the anywhere. So let's say state, and let's make it call a state. And now inside that we need to giving one prompt, because based on the prompt our large language model can decide. Okay, so let's say prompt. So prompt equal to, you're going to using here the prompt template. Let's say prompt template. Now inside that you need to giving one template. Okay, so first you need to giving here one input variable. So our input variable nothing but one textual data is taken from the users, so it should be our nothing but our input variable. Let's say input variable. Okay, our input variable is nothing but one text, so let's say text. Now our classification node have various types of category. It can be the research, let's say it can be the research, let's say research. It can be the news, it can be the blog, or it can be the others, let's say others. Okay, this is nothing but our categories of the classification node. So it will taking one text as the input variable, and the template is nothing but based on this research, news, and blog, it will classify them. So let's say classify, okay, classify the following, let's say classify the following text into one of the categories. Okay, categories. Okay, so categories is nothing but, let's say news, let's say blog, let's say research. Okay, research, or other, let's say other, let's say other. Okay, this is nothing but the categories of that. Okay, and after that we need to also store, we need to also showing this text as well in the curly brackets. So we need to give it here in the prompt, let's say give it here 2 backslash n, so that it will go to the next line, and then we're going to showing here our text. Okay, we're going to store it inside this text, and then we to give it here our 2 backslash n for the categories. So we can, because based on this text it will actually classify the categories as well. So let's say categories. Okay, okay, you can make it category because it's the singular number. Okay, so you can see here we just giving her a template called classify the following text into one of the categories: news, blog, research, or other. Then it will showing the output like like that. The text is given by the users, then the category, then the entity, and the summarize. That's our output format. Now what I can do, we need to actually creating here the chain for that. We need to creating the chain using the human messages. So that's why it defining here this one, human messages. Now why human messages? Because see, this is given by the human. This message or this prompt is given by the human. Now we can interacting this human message to the AI message using the LangGraph. So what I can do, we can give it here, let's say human. We can pass it to a human message, and inside this content, we're going to passing here our prompt. Okay, our prompt, let's say prompt dot format, and inside this format, we're going to passing here our text. Now see the important thing, because this tags it stored inside our state, so we can access it from the any here, we can access it from any here, because this is a graph, this is a graph. Now we can access it from the state because all of the value is stored it inside the text. You can see it automatically give me suggestions, it automatically give me the suggestions. You can see, because we initialize here our state, it will automatically give me the suggestion. It's called text. Now we have the text, so this is nothing but my message. So let's say message, and after that we're simply going to invoke it. If you can see that we're using here the invoke method, so you can using here the large language model right now. Let's say llm dot invoke, and now inside that you're going to passing here the message. That's our message, and we're simply going to using here the content. Okay, content dot strip. Now why strip? Why content? Because you can see if I using here the content, it will give me just one content. If I'm not using just content, it's just giving me here one line with the content tag. So how I actually strip it, I can got all of the classification node. It is a research, it is a blog, or it is a news. So that's why using the strip method, using the strip method. Now what I can do is simply going to using the strip method to actually starting here our classification thing. So let's say that's our classification. That's our classifications. Now we can simply going to return it as a from of dictionary. Let's say return the, let's say classification. Let's say see a classification, and then you can passing here, let's say classification. I really go slowly, बहुत slowly मैं जा रहा हूँ यहाँ पर. देखो, तो हमने यहाँ पर क्या किया, हमने हमारा फर्स्ट जो नोट फंक्शन है उसको क्रिएट कर लिया, जो है क्लासिफिकेशन नोट. सो सेकंड नोट क्या है, एंटिटी एक्सट्रैक्शन नोट. तो हमने तो आपको बता भी दिया है कि नेम एंटिटी एक्सट्रैक्शन रिकॉग्नाइजेशन क्या होता है. इट्स नथिंग बट द it's nothing working on a structured text. It's nothing but it's nothing but some kind of the locations. It can be the people, it can be the organizations. That's called the entity. Okay, we need to extract the key identities for that. Now what I can do is simply going to defining it. Let's say df, let's say entity extraction. Let's say extraction. It should be extraction. Okay, extraction node. Then it is also taking on a state, and then it giving here one prompt for that. So let's give it the prompt. Let's say prompt is equal to prompt template. Let's say prompt template, it should be the capital. Okay, prompt template, and inside they need to giving here the same thing called input variables. It will be input variables, and our input variable is nothing but one textual data. Okay, textual data. This is the basics. This is the basics. This is nothing the hello world of the LangGraph. So that's why I choosing these projects. Then I'm going to give it here one prompt template. So I need to pass it inside here. It should be one template. Okay, and then I'm going to make it. Let's start. Our next project is called the asset grading system, which one is nothing but one kind of advanced system. You're going to learn about the conditional edges as well, the quite advanced topics. So that's why choosing the project number 2 is called the asset grading system as well. Okay, because I know you are, I just assume that you are the beginners. Okay, let's entities. Then let's make it. Let's say person. It can be the organization. Let's say organization. It can be the location. Okay, starting all the entities, look, person, organization, look, you can give any of them. Okay, from the following, let's say following, oh following text. It's having some problem in my keyboard. मेरा जो कीबोर्ड था 4000 का वो क्या बताओ आपको भाई, नष्ट हो गया, इसलिए मुझे बहुत दुख हो रहा है, छोटा मोटा कीबोर्ड लेके चलना पड़ रहा है मुझे. Okay, as a we can comma separated, so that because it's the multiple number of actually multiple, it can be the multiple number of entities, it can be the person, it can be the organization, it can be the locations, क्योंकि बहुत सारे हो सकते हैं यहाँ पर. तो हमने यहाँ पर क्या किया, comma separated list में दे दिया. Let's see separated. Okay, separated list. Now we can simply going to give it on backslash n. Let's say same backslash n backslash n. Then we can show the text, and we can making it as a text. Then what we have the entities. So we can give it a backslash n, and let's say entities. Okay, this is nothing but the output format, right? Entities. इतना बढ़िया भी कुछ भी नहीं है, but now we can simply going to copying this out. But one more thing. See, this is just one single string. So that's why using the strip. Now we need to also split it based on the comma, because it give me the value in the comma separated. You need to also store it inside a list. So how can you do that? You can copy this first thing. It is the same as it is thing, because it also using here the human messages and also starting here the prompt based on the textual data. Now we have the entities. Let's entities. Okay, entities is nothing but llm.invoke, and inside that you're going to passing here the message. That's our message, and then you're going to using here content first, and you're going to using here the strip, and also you're going to split it based on the comma. Based on the comma, we're going to split it, because entity can be the multiple number of. Okay, so that's why you're using the comma. In the comma separated, it is stored inside a list. Now let's return here the entities. Let's give it to your entities. Copy this out, and I am gonna paste it to here. Okay, now let's define here our last one. That's called the summarization. Let's call the summarization node. It's same thing, actually using here the state, and then we can copy this thing because it's string itself. We can copy this out. We can copy this out. Okay, so we need to do some indentations. So it could be the prompt should be the changing. It could be the summarize the following text into one short sentence. Let's say summarize. Okay, summarize the following text in one short sentence. Okay, okay, sentence, and you can using here. Let's say don't need this one because we don't need in this out now. We can give a full stop, then text, and instead of the category, we need to give it here. Let's say summary. It should be the SEUMMRY summary. That's it. Cool. Now to making these classifications to be the summary. Okay, and then we need to using here this summary on here. Let's copy this out and paste it out. Now you can see that our note is ready. Now what we need to do? We need to do the next one. The next processing is called the create tools and the build the workflow. Now let's creating here the tools. So what I can do, it's simply going to create the tools. We can, let's give it a text. This is the number 3. So you can give it to, let's say 3 dot, and then you can get it here. Create tools and build a workflow. Now you create the node, you need to join them using the edges. So for that, into creating the workflow, it's called the workflow in the LangGraph. How can you create the workflow? You can create the workflow using the state graph, because it's nothing but one graph itself, the LangGraph. So let's say state graph, and we can pass in here the state that we created our state. Now our state is inside our workflow. Now we can join them, that's our workflow. It should be our workflow. Let's give it to here. Now we simply joining here one of them. First you have the start node, then you have the classification node, then you have the entity node, then you have the summarization node. So what you need to do, first you need to initialize the node for the graph. So we can give it here one more thing. Let's say workflow dot add node. Let's say add underscore node, and inside that we can give it here our method that we created. Let's say first in call the classification node. So why not give the suggestions? Classification node. Let's copy this out. We first initialize the node for that. We can copy this out. We can paste it here for the 3 type, because we have the 3 node. So another one is called the entity. Is called the entity extraction node. We can copy this out again and paste it to here. Then we have the summarization node. Okay, it should be summarization node. We can copy this out and we can paste it here. Now our node is ready. Now what you can do is simply going to creating the edges for that. So how can I create the edges? We have the start node. We need to initialize the start node first. So a start node is nothing but our classification node. We can first, let's say set entry. See, set conditional, not conditional entry. Set entry point. Because this is not a conditional edges. This is a single workflow. So we need to passing here. The classification node, because this is our start node in the graph. We have the start node. Need to go directly to this classification node. That's why it's an entry node. Now we need to add the edges. Okay. So let's add the edge. So let's say workflow dot add underscore edge. Okay. And what I can do, we need to add first classification node to the entity node, then the entity node to the summarization node. Okay. So it will be summarization node or not. Yeah, that's it. So we can give it here, let's say classification node to the entity extraction node. Just getting here the edges, we join them. Now we need to joining here this entity extraction node to the summarization node, and the summarization node is added to the end node, right? So we need to copy this out, and then we're going to paste it here, and the summarization node is added to our end node that you see in the graph, exact graph. Let me see you. See in the image, exact same code written on here. We have the entry point, it's called the classification node. This is our start node. Then we're joining this one to the entity extractions. Then we have the summarization tool. We have the end node. Okay, and end node we import it from the LangGraph. That's it. Now we need to compile the workflow. So let's say workflow. It should be the small letter. Let's say workflow dot compile, and this is nothing but our applications. So let's make it called the app. Now we can access the graph from any of the state. Now what I can do is simply going to do the visualizations of the workflow. So that's our 4th step. That's called visualize the workflow. You can copy this out, and after that you can simply go into taking one text, and then I'm going to give it to here. So this is nothing but our 4th number step. So let's give it here 4 dot visualize the workflow. Now we can using the display method. That's called the display method. That is imported from the IPython. So क्या करते हैं, हमको यहाँ पर use करते हैं display. So inside this display we're going to using the image, because it's nothing but an image itself, as well as we can actually download this out. Now this workflow is stored inside our applications. So let's app dot get underscore graph dot draw. We will draw here draw the made png so that you can download in these images as well. Now we need to giving here our draw method. So our draw method is nothing but our that we actually imported. That's called the made method draw.api. Okay, this is nothing but our draw method they actually imported. Now you can see the same exact node or exact graph you can see earlier we created on here. Now we have our graph on here. Now we can create the testing pipeline. For that we simply going to go on here and copy this testing the pipeline. So testing the pipeline, so I am simply going to give it to here, and let's try to add it down. Okay, that's our 5 number. Let's say dot 5 dot, and that's our testing the pipeline. That's it. Now for testing the pipeline, what we can do, we need to taking one sample text. Let's say sample underscore text. Okay, so you can give it here on sample text. Let's me copy it out. So let's give the sample text. Let's copy and paste it to here. And then I am simply going to process this text. So this is nothing but on text format. You need to pass it here as a form of dictionary. Let's say text. And then we can pass in here this sample text. That's a sample underscore text. Okay. So sample underscore text. And after that, what I can do is simply going to create it inside a variable. Let's say state input. That's our input. Now we can simply go into using this text. Okay, text inside our applications. See, we directly using the app. We are not using here the large language model. We're directly using his app.invoke. Now this app.invoke is itself a large language model, and inside it we can passing have a state input. State input. Let's say state input. Now after that, what I can do is simply going to make it as a result. Let's say result, and then we can simply going to printing this out. So how can you printing it out? Let's try to shift enter. See, unhashable type call the list. Why? Let's see, is the text and the sample text, and let's see why this error is coming up here. Okay, the problem is actually happening because this is an dictionary. We give it here the comma, so that's why this problem is happening. So you need to run it again, and then we can running it here. Okay, that's the human error. Okay, now it will actually import it, and now you can see executed this shell. ऐसा होता है भाई, थोड़ा थोड़ा होता है, हम तो human भी है ना बस. So you can see here using the app. Now the question is, sir, why should you using here the LangGraph? So let's say one problem is coming based on the classifications problem or the entity problem. It will go to directly from here. Now you can see this is nothing but one directed graph, single one directed acyclic graph. Now the question, let's say I had some multiple number of node. Okay, that's called a multi-AI agent. Now see, if I going this try to doing this work in one single flow, I can do it because it have the multiple number of agent. Let's say one agent is doing the classification problem, one agent is doing here the entity extraction, one agent is doing the summarizations. So that's why the LangGraph is created for the multi-AI agents. If I have the, let's say I have the multiple number of agents on like that, just like creating here the edges or creating the workflow, so you need to also choosing this one. Let's say this problem is based on the handle billing, this problem is based on the handle technical, it will just working on this one so that I don't need to working with the other agents. That's mean multi-AI agent is nothing but the collections of artificial intelligence so that it can work together. So that's why using here this LangGraph, right? Now what I can do is simply going to printing this out. Let's say print here, let's say classification, let's say classification, and now it's simply going to give it here it from the result because it is stored inside the result. Now inside the result we have to start it based on the classifications. That's our node name, and after that is simply going to printing it out. Let's copy this out, and I am gonna paste it to here. Okay, let's try to paste it to here, paste it to here. Then after that, let's make it to the entity. Let's say backslash n and entities. Okay, and then this is nothing but the summary. Okay, let's say backslash n summary so that it can give to the next line. Okay, it should be the entities. Let's entities, and then this is the summary that we're creating in the state. Okay, now let's running this out, and you can see here classification text is called the news category, the news, because this is OpenAI has announced the GPT-4 model. This text appeared to be a fractional report about a recent development in the field of artificial intelligence. An entity is nothing but the OpenAI, the GPT-4, the GPT-3. This is nothing but the entity. Then it will give a summary. OpenAI has announced the GPT-4 model, a large multi-model model that exhibit human level performance and is designed to be more efficient and server its business. Okay, so you can see here that's how actually it will give the summarization for that. You can also creating here one Grady application for that, or you can using here the Flux application. You can building here the Streamlit application for that as well. So it's your homework to creating here the applications. So let's say homework, because I already built so many of the GNA projects. So that's your homework to creating here the Gradu application. Okay. चलो अब इसको समराइज करते हैं, देखो हिंदी में करते हैं हम। तो हमने एक टेक्स्ट एनालिसिस पाइपलाइन को क्रिएट किया है यहाँ पर। तो इसके लिए हमने यहाँ पर 3 स्टेट की स्टेट इसको फॉलो किया है। तो फर्स्ट है टेक्स्ट क्लासिफिकेशंस, जो कुछ प्री डिफाइंड कैटेगरी है यहाँ पर, न्यूज़, ब्लॉग, रिसर्च और अदर्स में। उसको हमको क्लासीफाई करना पड़ेगा बस। इसके बाद हमको एंटिटी एक्सट्रैक्शन करना पड़ेगा, नेम एंटिटी रिकॉग्नाइजेशंस, जो एनएलपी का टेक्स्ट है। तो उसमें कुछ की एंटिटीज है जस्ट लाइक पर्सन्स, ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, लोकेशंस। इसका बावजूद आपको इसको एक्सट्रैक्ट करना पड़ेगा बस। इसके बाद है लास्ट वन इज कॉल्ड द टेक्स्ट समराइजेशंस। तो क्वेरी लेगा यूजर से, या उसके बाद उसको टेक्स्ट को समराइज कर देगा बस। तो हमने फर्स्ट किया है पर, तो जो लाइब्रेरी है रिक्वायर्ड लाइब्रेरी लैंगचेन कम्युनिटी एंड लैंगग्राफ को यहाँ पर इंपोर्ट किया है। इसके बाद टाइप डिक्ट को हमने यहाँ पर इंपोर्ट किया है, क्योंकि जो लैंगग्राफ है ना, वो इज़ नथिंग बट वन काइंड ऑफ ग्राफ टाइप्स ऑफ लाइब्रेरी। इसके बाद वहाँ पर भी आपको स्टेट भी मैनेज कर सकते हो उस वहाँ पर। तो ये स्टेट मैनेज करने के लिए हमने यहाँ पर टाइप डिक्ट जो है ना उसको इंपोर्ट किया है, क्योंकि हमको जो स्टेट क्रिएट करना है वहाँ पर हमको डिक्शनरी फॉर्म में हमारा जो की, इसके बाद डेटा टाइप उसको देना पड़ेगा बस। इसके बाद हमने यहाँ पर लिस्ट भी इंपोर्ट किया है, क्योंकि जो एंटिटी है वो लिस्ट में होगा, क्योंकि यहाँ पर बहुत खूब सारी एंटिटीज़ है इसलिए। इसके बाद हमने यहाँ पर स्टेट ग्राफ को इंपोर्ट किया है, क्योंकि जो लाइन ग्राफ है वो इज़ नथिंग बट एन ग्राफ। तो ग्राफ क्रिएट करने के लिए हमको स्टेट ग्राफ को इंपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा, सो दैट यू कैन क्रिएट द वर्क फ्लो। इसके बाद हमने प्रॉम्प्ट टेम्पलेट को यहाँ पर इंपोर्ट किया है, क्योंकि जो एलएलएम है वो प्रॉम्प्ट इंजीनियरिंग के ऊपर काम करता है, इसलिए हमको प्रॉम्प्ट टेम्पलेट भी यहाँ पर इंपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा लैंगचेन से। लैंगचेन क्यों? देखो भाई, लैंगग्राफ खुद से लैंगग्राफ के ऊपर भी काम करता है इसलिए। तो इसके बाद हमने मेरमेड ड्रॉ मेथड इसको यूज़ किया है, क्योंकि ड्रॉ मेथड है जिसके बाजू आप एक्चुअली जो ग्राफ और फ्लो चार्ट है उसको आप ड्रॉ कर सकते हो। इसके बाद ह्यूमन मैसेजेस है, क्योंकि हमको ह्यूमन मैसेजेस और एआई मैसेज में थोड़ा कन्वर्सेशन करना है, इसलिए हमको ह्यूमन मैसेज स्कीमा से भी इंपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा बस। इसके बाद हमने डिस्प्ले और इमेज को भी इंपोर्ट कर दिया। तो वो हमारा बिल्डिंग द टेक्स्ट प्रीप्रोसेसिंग पाइपलाइन, वो हमारा पाइपलाइन है। तो यहाँ पर हम 5 पाइपलाइन के बारे में बात करेंगे। तो फर्स्ट है डिफाइन स्टेट, हमको स्टेट डिफाइन करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि हम लैंगग्राफ की मदद से इसको सॉल्व करेंगे। इसके बाद चैट ग्राफ की मदद से हमको लार्ज लैंग्वेज मॉडल की इनिशियलाइज़ करना पड़ेगा बस। इसके बाद कुछ नोट फंक्शन है जस्ट लाइक क्लासिफिकेशन, एंटी डिस्ट्रैक्शंस, इसके बाद समराइजेशन। इसके लिए हमें नोट फंक्शन भी बिल्ड करना पड़ेगा। इसके बाद टू टूल्स एंड बिल्ड वर्क फ्लो है, सो दैट यू कैन सी द वर्क फ्लो एज वेल्स इन अ ग्राफ फॉर्मेट। इसको विजुअलाइज कर दिया और टेस्टिंग कर लिया तो कुछ। तो देन यहाँ पर देख सकते हो मैंने फर्स्ट यहाँ पर दे दिया, स्टेट को डिफाइन कर लिया। इसके बाद चैट ग्रॉक को यहाँ पर इंपोर्ट कर लिया, एलएलएम को भी यहाँ पर सीधा चैट ग्रॉक से, आई मीन ग्रॉक क्लाउड से इंपोर्ट कर लिया बस। इसके बाद यहाँ पर नोट फंक्शन के भी हमने बना लिया, क्लासिफिकेशन नोट, एंटिटी एक्सट्रैक्शन नोट, समराइजेशन नोट। इसके बाद हमने टूल्स क्रिएट किया जो वर्क फ्लो है, क्योंकि लैंग्राफ की मदद से हमको क्रिएट करने पड़ते हैं बस। तो क्रिएट करने के बाद उसको मैं विजुअलाइज कर लिया बस। हमारे पास 3 ऐसे नोट है जो काम करेगा यहाँ पर, और जो लैंग्राफ है ना वो मल्टी एआई एजेंट है। तो एक एजेंट क्लासिफिकेशन का काम करेगा, और दूसरी एजेंट यहाँ पर एंटिटी का काम करेगा, और तीसरी एजेंट यहाँ पर समराइज का काम करेगा बस। तो इसके बाद हमने इसको टेस्ट किया है सैम्पल टेक्स्ट की मदद से। इसके बाद देखो यहाँ पर क्लासिफिकेशन थोड़ा यहाँ पर आया है, कैटेगरी है न्यूज़। इसके बाद यहाँ पर कुछ एंटिटी दिया है ओपनएआई, GPT-4 और GPT-3। तो अब आपका लिए एक होमवर्क भी है, पर आपको एक ग्रेडी एप्लीकेशन बनाना पड़ेगा, और मैंने एक्चुअली बहुत सारी प्रोजेक्ट ऑलरेडी अपलोड कर दिया है मैंने मल्टीवर्ड सीरीज में, तो इसलिए बेटर होगा आप एप्लीकेशन खुद से क्रिएट कर लो। तो मैं क्या करूँगा, थोड़ा और इसको क्लैरिफाई करूँगा और टेस्टिंग करूँगा थोड़ा, दो और लेके चलो लेते हैं। तो यहाँ पर मैंने दो टेक्स्ट दे दिया, एक है रिसर्च का टेक्स्ट। तो यहाँ पर देख सकते हो, रिसेंट एडवांसमेंट इन क्वांटम कंप्यूटिंग हैव शोन पोटेंशियल इन सॉल्विंग प्रॉब्लम क्वांटम computing or quantum machine learning also. You can see it's nothing but based on research, and you can see the reasons. The entity is called MIT, the IBM, okay, and that's the entity. And you can see here there are no person entities mentioned in the text. यहाँ पर कोई पर्सन एंटिटी नहीं है और लोकेशन भी यहाँ पर मेंशन नहीं है, इसलिए क्योंकि हमने एंटिटी यहाँ पर जस्ट पर्सन, लोकेशन और ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को सेट कर दिया बस, इसलिए इसको समरी भी यहाँ पर दे दिया। और सेकंड जो ब्लॉक है, थर्ड जो ब्लॉक है वो है ब्लॉक टाइप का। तो इन द वर्ल्ड हायर टेक्नोलॉजीज इन्वॉल्विंग रैपिडली एआई हैज बिकम ए बज़वर्ड दैट्स रिशेविंग द डॉट डॉट डॉट। एंड यहाँ पर आप एंटिटी देख सकते हैं, यहाँ पर एंटिटी, यहाँ पर कोई पर्सन भी मेंशन नहीं है, हाँ, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन भी मेंशन नहीं है और लोकेशन की भी कोई बात नहीं हुआ, इसलिए थोड़ा एम्प्टी होगा एंटिटी। इसके बाद समरी आप दे सकते हैं, यहाँ पर देखो एक्सप्लेन द टॉप 5 एआई ट्रेंड इन एक्सेप्टेड टू रिवोल्यूशन इन 2024। तो यहाँ पर ये है फुल कंप्लीट ट्यूटोरियल, क्योंकि ये बिगिनर्स प्रोजेक्ट है इस लैंग्राफ की ट्यूटोरियल में। इसका बाद जो आप सीख सकते हो कैसे ग्राफ क्रिएट कर सकते, कैसे आपको स्टेट भी मैनेज करना पड़ता है बस। So now we're simply going to jump in our next project that's called essay grading system using LangGraph। तो थोड़ा एडवांस तरीके से होगा, यहाँ पर थोड़ा एडवांस तरीके से वर्कफ्लो हमको क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा बस। सो लेट्स क्रिएट दिस आउट। Welcome back to our project number 2 that's called Essay Grading System using LangGraph. And this is the second number use cases, and this is quite advanced than the before, I mean our project number 1. So here it have the 4 key studies. One is called the content relevance, to check in the content relevance to our given question and the answers. And it also checking here our grammatical. It is nothing but creating for the teachers. And we have the structure analysis. It will try to analyze the structure of your answer. Then it will also depth analysis of that, and after that it will give you one kind of response, I mean calculate the total score for that. So that's why you're going to choosing this one, because it's also one advanced types of project and having some advanced types of technique. I'm going to using it here, just like the conditional edges. Now I'm simply going to importing here important library called a LangChain. Then we have the LangChain code, LangChain grok, as well as the LangGraph. That's our record library. So I'm going to install it by using here pip command, pip install LangChain, LangChain code, LangChain grok, and the community and the LangGraph. Okay, so let's using here the shift enter. And after that, what I can do is simply going to importing here the all of them. Okay, so it's better you can removing the output from here. Let's clear output. Okay, first I'm going to importing here the typing, because from using typing we can using here, we can creating here the state, because LangGraph is nothing but an state management types of library in the LLMs. Okay, so let's say from typing, let's say typing, I'm going to importing here the type dict, right? In our project number 1 we also using this type dict to creating here our state, right? And after that I'm going to importing here the state graph. So same thing, let's say from LangGraph. Okay, LangGraph dot graph. I'm going to go split here because this is the project number 2, and we already know about this thing, that how can you using here the state graph, how can you use here the type dict, right? So let's import here the state graph. Let's say state graph, and then I'm going to using here the and, because this is the and node of our graph, right? And after that I'm going to import, let's say from LangChain. Okay, let's say LangChain dot prompts. Okay, prompts, you know, to using here the prompts. Now in this case you're going to using here the chat prompts template. In previous you're going to using here the just prompt template. Now I'm going to using here the chat prompt template. Let's say chat prompt template, because it's just one kind of chatting technique, right? Then I'm going to import from LangChain dot LangChain underscore core dot runnable. Okay, let's say runnables dot graph. I'm going to importing here the same thing for visualization, visualizing our graph. This is nothing but a draw method in the LangChain code, right? And after that I'm going to importing here the IPython so that I can visualize the graph. So let's say from IPython dot display. Okay, it should be display. I'm going to importing here the display and image. So it should be comma image. That's it. Now I need to also importing here one of the important library called regular expressions. Why? Because in that I need to checking here the grammatical, I need to checking here the content is relevant to or not. And after that, checking here our structure analysis and as well as the depth analysis. So that's why I need to also calculate the regular expression on here and to checking that to calculate each of the score for that. So what I can do, I'm simply going to running this out, and after that, I'm going to creating here a state. Okay, but it's better you can give it here our building the assay grading system pipeline. I'm going to pass it here because I'm not going to wasting the time. Well, so that's our pipeline, building the assay grading system pipeline. So first we have the state definitions, then you have the large language model initializations, then you have the grading node functions. This one important in case of LangGraph because LangGraph itself the combination of the node and the edges. Then you have the workflow definitions and the visualizing the workflow, then the assay grading function so that you can checking this out, and finally you need to testing the pipeline. So first one is called the state definitions. So let's try to take it and click on here, and let's say one dot, let's say this one, state definitions. Now let's creating here a state. So in your state you have the essay itself. Okay, essay itself, then we have the relevant score, then you have the grammar check, the structure check, and the depth of the score, and final we have the final score, right? So that's is nothing but our state. So what I can do is better, let's go on the graph and see that again that how can you creating this out. Okay, that's our graph. You can see it have a start node, it having one end node, and having all of the agent that's called check for relevance, check the grammar, analyze the structure, then evaluate the depth, and have the calculate final score. It's nothing but the state of that. I mean, it's nothing but the node. And but you can see here it having some conditional edges. You can see just like the patch. Okay, you can see here start node started from the check relevant, then it will go to the check grammar, it will go to the analyze structure, and go to the evaluate depth and the final score. And after that final score go to the end section. But you can see here this evaluate depth is connected to this analyze structure, to the check grammar as well as the check relevant. That's why it will conditionally add it to each of them. So that's why choosing these projects in the project number 2, right? Now let's start creating here a state that's called check relevance, then check grammar, analyze structure, evaluate the depth, and the calculate the final score. Okay, so let's create a class that's called a state. Let's say class, let's say state, which one enumerate here the type date, because we need to initialize here the type of the data type as well as our name of the state. So our state first state is called the essay itself because you need to pass it to here. I mean, pass it to here as an input query. Then you need to give it here the relevant score. So let's say relevant. Okay, it should be relevance. Okay, relevance score. Then let's make it to be a string because it should be a score, right? Or floating point number. Let's say it floating point number because this is a score. A score can be 0.85, or if I calculate this one as a 1.00, so we can making it, let's say 0.2 or 0.3, 0.7 like that. So we make it at the floating point number. So now we're simply going to taking here the another state called the grammar score. So that's a grammar underscore score. Let's say score, and let's make it float as well. And after that, we need to taking here the structure score as well. So let's say structure underscore score is also one floating point number because those is nothing but the grading point. So grading can be the floating point number as well. Then we're simply going to give it to the depth score. Let's say depth underscore score. So let's say score is nothing but the floating point number as well. And after that, we have the final score. Let's say final score. So this should be the floating point number as well. That's our state. It's better I can drink some water. Okay, sorry for that. Having some issue in the voices. That's why this voice is coming like that. So the number 2 is called the language model initialization. So we can taking one text, and this is nothing but the number 2 called language model initialization. Okay, like that. This is the number 2. Now for the case, you're going to be using here the chat grok, right? So you can import it. Let's say from langchain grok, I'm going to importing here the chat grok. Let's say chat grok. Okay, and after that, let's initialize this our inside variable called large language model, also LLMs, right? Let's say chat grok, and inside that I'm going to passing here the first value called temperature. You know about that because in project number 1 we also show that how can actually using the chat grok as well. Then you have the grok API key. Let's say grok API key. So it should be the API key itself. Let's paste it to here. And after that, we have the model name. So our model name is called llama 3.3 17b versatile. So that's our large language model. Let's initialize it and try to invoke it with a question. Let's say invoke and give it here one question. Let's say what is let's say open AI. Okay, let's say what is chat gpt, that's it. And let's make it inside a variable called result. So let's make it result so that you can see the result as well. And now after that, I'm simply going to printing here the result. Let's say print the result, that's it. And you can see here we got some questions. Okay, in the environment variable. Okay, it could be the okay, it should be the grok, it should be the grok API key or the API grok. Okay, it should be Z, okay, not Q. So that's why. Okay. Yep, now it's loading. You can see it will take in time. ChatGPT is an AI chatbot developed by the company OpenAI. So you can see it's nothing but inside the content. If I wanted extracting here this one, so it should be the content. And then you can see here the content format. You can see here it having some key features of the ChatGPT included: conversational interface, contextual understanding, knowledge based, language generations, customer service that you already created on that in our series, and the language learning, the content creations and research and the educations. Okay, so we initialize here our large language model, and now simply going to creating our grading node function, which is really important. Now let's go on here and taking one shell on the text, and this is the number 3. That's the 3 point, just this one. Okay, control B, paste it here. Grading node functions. Sorry, the internet connection is lost, so I need to connect it again. So now let's creating here our grading node functions. So now what I can do, I need to creating here the node functions based on those status. Let's say content relevance, then grammar check, the structure analysis, as well as the depth of analysis. And it also calculate the score based on the state, right, that we define on here. So now let's try to creating it here. Let's say depth check relevance. Okay, it will taking the state and then state, and it will enumerate this state as well. Okay, now I need to creating here the prompt. Let's say chat prompt template. Let's say chat prompt template because you already import it out. And let's say using the from template, from not messages, it should be the from template because we are going to giving here on template as well. And then let's initialize it inside a variable. Let's say prompt. Let's say prompt. Okay, let's say I'm asking a questions based on gene. What is the gene actually in the terms of biological? Okay, so but the user or the student will give me the answer based on the gene is nothing but the both pieces hota hai acha. So it's not a relevant, right? It's not relevant questions and answers for that. Question is relevant, but the answer is not relevant. So that's why I just actually give this example just because of when I was in college. In my biology exam, the teacher asked not me actually, on my friend the question of what is the genome, and he gave one kind of a funny answer that sir जीन का मतलब होता है भूत पिशाच होता है तो हनुमान चालीसा पढ़ना पड़ेगा मुझे. So chat prompt template. So now let's give it here the chat prompt template. So it's not even the checking the relevant of the question and the answers. So now let's what I can do. We can give it here. Let's say analyze, because we need to analyze. Okay, I having some problem in the caps lock. Okay, analyze the relevance of the following. Let's say essay to the given question. Let's say I need to write an essay based on the cow, and I write the essay based on the dog. Okay, it's not irrelevant. Okay, the first analyze the relevant of the following essay to the given topics. So first one is called the provide a relevant score between 0 and 1, because we're checking this score grading node functions based on 0 to 1. Let's say I just got here 80% score, I got in here let's say 20% score, I just make it 0 to 1 in a floating point number. That's why I actually give it the floating point number in our state. Okay, because it can be the floating point number. So now let's give it here. Let's say provide a relevance. Okay, it should be relevance score between, let's say between, okay, between 0 to 0 and 1. Okay, that's it. The second one is nothing but call your response should start, okay, start with a score, okay, like that. uh that's a score, okay, just a score, okay, followed by score. And you can give it here, let's say follow it by, okay, let's say follow it by numeric score, okay, because it should be the numeric, because we initialize the state in the floating point number, so you should be always numeric, it not can be the string number, right? And then after that, what I can do, you can give it here another one, uh, that's called the then provide your explanations, okay, why you give this kind of relevant score, is it relevant to this topic or not, okay, then that is a provide your explanation, let's say explanation, okay, it is okay nation, okay, that's it. And then you can give it here backslash n, let's say backslash n, let's say essay, and then we can give it here inside the curly brackets our the state is nothing but called the same, okay. So in previous we have the chat, I mean we have a text, now in this case we have the asset, okay. So that's our prompt is ready. Now what I can do is simply going to actually format it out, I mean stacking here and creating here the invoke it using the large language model, let's say let's invoke. And now inside that you need to passing here our prompt, okay, dot format, okay, format, and then to give it here the assay, okay. Now all of the data should be stored inside the state, okay. So we can give it from the state, and then from here we can access our assay, okay, I mean that's our assay that we pass on here. Now this is nothing but our result. Now based on that it will give me some kind of relevant score. Now the question is in this text or in the question or answer is given by the users or the student, you need to first checking that first you need to checking here that is there any regular expression or not. You need to also remove them, and also you need to start in the score from here. So for that you need to creating here another function which will actually help us to removing here the regular expressions, I mean searching on that. That's why I'm putting here this re module on here. Now what I can do, I need to creating here a function just call it start the score, so that it will start in the score from the text or text. So let's say def, let's say start, let's say underscore score, and which one taking one content. So let's say content, and our content is nothing but an string, and it will give me one floating point number. That's mean based on this score, because this large language model is nothing but giving me one kind of textual data. Now from this textual data I need to calculate the numeric score, because you can see numeric score, we need to calculate the numeric score followed by this score, okay. Now what I can do is simply going to matching this out, we need to matching this out. So what I can do, I need to creating here a match function, let's say match, okay, let's say match, let's say match, and then I just give it here underscore so that it not look like the Python functions. You can use it because it's not a role. Then we can using here rari.search, okay, let's say search, and inside that to giving here some kind of thing, just like it can be the score, okay. I'm going to copy this out, okay. So it can be the search thing on that, okay, and it is passing here the content that is coming from here, and that's our match variable. Now based on that, if it is match, let's say if it is match, let's say match, then what I can do is simply going to returning here a value, let's say return a floating point number, let's say return floating point number, because you convert them into typecasting, and that's our match, okay. And we simply going to group it out and in the one, okay. Why float? Because we actually initialize our state in a floating point number, so that's why you need to returning here the floating point number. Otherwise the value error, let's say return here the value error, let's say value error, and you can pass it here on text, let's say could not extracting the score from this, okay. So you can give it to a string, so let's say code, okay, culd could not, I need to replace this keyboard, okay, start score from let's say this context, okay, let's say content, if it not giving here the relevant score for that. Now using this one we can starting here all of them, okay. थोड़ा मैं समराइज कर देता हूँ आपको हिंदी में. तो हमने यहाँ पर क्या किया, हमने यहाँ पर एक ऐसे ग्रेडिंग सिस्टम हमको बनाना पड़ेगा। इसलिए यहाँ पर हमने 4 की स्टेट को कंसीडर किया है पर। तो फर्स्ट है हमको चेक करना पड़ेगा कंटेंट रिलेवेंट है और नहीं, क्योंकि देखो आपको एक क्वेश्चन किया है जीन के बारे में और आपके बूथ फीचर्स के बारे में बोल दिया बायोलॉजी क्लास में। तो हॉटस्पॉट के बारे में आपको पूछा गया, आपको टीचर के वहाँ से आपके मोबाइल फ़ोन का हॉटस्पॉट के बारे में आपको बता दिया वहाँ पर। तो बायोलॉजी में भी हॉटस्पॉट होता है। ओके? तो एक टर्म होता है, बिकॉज़ आई एम द नॉलेज डॉक्टर, आई हैव सम बेसिक नॉलेज इन द डॉक्टरिंग साइड एवर, बिकॉज़ माय ड्रीम इज़ टू वांट टू बी डॉक्टर, बट गलती से मैंने इंजीनियर बन गया। इसके बाद क्या है, ग्रामर चेक करना है। इसके लिए हमको ग्रामर चेक करने के लिए हमको भी एक फंक्शन क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा। इसको स्ट्रक्चर भी एनालाइज़ करना है। स्ट्रक्चर अच्छा है, जो आपने आपका टीचर आपका स्टूडेंट जो आंसर दिया है वो स्ट्रक्चर अच्छा है या नहीं, इसको डेप्थ में वो एनालाइज़ किया है और नहीं। और चेक करके उसको आप एक फाइनल स्कोर दे सकते हो। तो इसलिए हम लैंगचेन ग्रॉक कम्युनिटी और लैंग्राफ को इंपोर्ट किया है, आई मीन इंस्टॉल किया है, और सबको लाइब्रेरी को इंपोर्ट किया है। इसके बाद आर ए बी आई मीन रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन भी यहाँ पर इंपोर्ट किया है। इसके बाद हमने एक स्टेट डिफाइन किया। स्टेट में फर्स्ट हो गया ऐसे जो यूज़र की तरफ से आएगा। इसके बाद रेलेवेंट स्कोर जो हम कैलकुलेट करेंगे 0 to 1 की बेसिस में। तो फ्लोटिंग पॉइंट नंबर होगा, क्योंकि फ्लोटिंग हो सकता है। इसके बाद ग्रामर स्कोर, इसके बाद स्ट्रक्चर स्कोर, डेप्थ स्कोर और फाइनल स्कोर जो हम रिटर्न करेंगे। देखो 80% मार्क मिला है, 20% मार्क मिला है, जस्ट लाइक दैट फेल हो गया। इसके बाद हम लैंग्वेज मॉडल की इनिशियलाइज कर दिया यहाँ पर। इसके बाद हमने फर्स्ट नोट फंक्शन क्रिएट किया जो है चेक रिलेवेंट। नाउ क्या करेंगे, यहाँ पर रिलेवेंट से चेक करने के बाद जो स्कोर है ना, जो यहाँ से आएगा स्कोर, तो वो हमें चेक करना पड़ेगा। वहाँ पर के स्कोर जो आया है ना, जो स्कोर यहाँ पर आया, स्कोर के बाद आया है, वो नंबर का मुझे स्टार्ट करना पड़ेगा यहाँ से, क्योंकि हमने यहाँ पर बोला भाई मुझे एक न्यूमेरिक स्कोर दे दो यहाँ पर। सो तो न्यूमेरिक स्कोर दे देगा, लेकिन हमको स्टैक भी करना पड़ेगा बस। तो इसलिए हमने यहाँ से स्टार्ट कर लिया, और स्टैक नहीं मिला तो नहीं मिला, बस स्टार्ट कर लिया, उसको फ्लोटिंग पॉइंट नंबर में कन्वर्ट कर लिया बस। नाउ हमने क्या करेंगे, उसको एक ट्राई एंड कैच ब्लॉक में देंगे, क्योंकि यहाँ से एक वैल्यू एरर भी आ सकता है, क्योंकि एक्सेप्शन आ सकती है, इसलिए इसका एक्सेप्शन भी आपको हैंडलिंग करना पड़ेगा बस। ओके, नाउ लेट्स हैंडलिंग हमारे एक्सेप्शन, बिकॉज if the value is not found, it will give me the value error, right? So let's try and catch block, not try catch, it can be try and accept in the Python. So let's state, and in state we're simply going to give it here, let's say relevant score. You can see when I actually gave here the state, it will automatically call in this one because it is stored inside the state. Okay, now let's say relevant score is nothing with the struct score that you created. Let's say struct underscore score, and inside that you can pass in here our result score. Let's say result, that's what result. Okay, किधर गया, किधर result dot content. Okay, जो content यहाँ पर एलएम से आया है बस दे दिया वहाँ पर। इसके बाद हमने क्या किया, यहाँ पर एक्सेप्ट ब्लॉक यूज किया, एक्सेप्ट ब्लॉक। इसके बाद मैंने यहाँ पर वैल्यू एरर दे दिया, लेट्स से वैल्यू एरर, let's say value error as e. Then we're simply going to give it here one statement. Let's say print, let's say let's say error in check relevance. Okay, relevance. Okay, then you can passing here our error, and after that you can simply going to save it inside a state called relevant score. Let's say it's not relevant to the question that is asked by the teachers, so you can pass it as a 0. 0 मिल गया भाई, 0.0 देना पड़ेगा. Then you're simply going to returning here a state. Okay, that's our first thing. Okay, now the second thing is called the checking grammar. Okay, it's called the checking grammar. The same thing, just you need to do some changes on here. We can copy this out, just you need to do some changes on here. So we can paste it to here. Then we can, instead of using here the check relevance, we can pass it, let's say check grammar, let's say grammar. Okay, and then analyze the grammar. Okay, grammar and language, let's say grammar and language. Okay, you need to also take care of the language. But let's say I ask you questions in the Hindi and you write it in the Bangla, so it cannot be the actuals. Yeah. Okay, now provide a grammar score. Let's say grammar a score between 0 to 1, and your response should start with a score followed by numerical score. Okay, then provide your explanations and same thing. Okay, now yes sir, then instead of the relevant score we can pass in here the grammar score, because this is the almost same, a score should be the same. Okay, so let's say copy this out and paste it to here. Okay, grammar score, and we can, let's say check grammar, we can make it, let's say check grammar, Okay, let's say check grammar score. Okay, let's say check grammar. Okay, so this is the error if it is caught, and see we do any mistake or not. Okay, no mistake. Now we're creating here the tools one, and now we need to creating here for the structure analysis and the depth analysis. Let's try to creating here the structure and the depth. So we can copy this out, same thing, because it's almost same. Just need to do some changes on here. So this is nothing but called the analyze. Let's analyze. Let's say structure. Okay, you can make it. Let's analyze structure. Then let's analyze the structure. Structure. Okay, structure. Okay, analyze the structure of the following AC to the given topic, and provide a grammar score. It should be the structure score. It's a structure score. Okay, structure score between 0 and 1, and your response should start with score followed by the numerical score and provide explanation on that. Okay, you just make it as a this one, no need to take it here. And instead of the grammar score, to give it here the structure score. That's the structure score, and then copy this out and passing this out. And let's try to copy this out again and to do the same thing for the depth analysis. Okay, let's try to creating here functions called evaluate depth. Okay, evaluate depth. Okay, now in a start depth. Okay, depth of analysis in the, let's say, of analysis. Okay, should be analysis. Let's say in the following essay. Okay, and provide a depth score between 0 and 1. Then your response should be start with this one, and it should be the structure score, should be the depth score. So let's say depth score, and this is the depth score and depth score, and it should be the depth score. Let's make it out, and it should be the structure score. Error in a structure score. इधर पे हम यहाँ पर डिलीट कर सकते हैं, कोई बात नहीं, बस स्ट्रक्चर में हो गया, इसके बाद ग्रामर पे भी चेक हो गया बस. Now this is fine. Now what you need to do, you need to creating here the last one, is called the calculate the final score. Now how can we calculate the final score? We have the 4 state. Okay, let's say this is one answer sheet, and based on the grammar, structure, depth, and the relevant, we giving some marks. Let's say I'm going to defining here the function first, then I'm going to discuss about that. Let's say calculate final underscore score, and inside the passing here the state. Let's say state, and then it should be the state itself, and then we're simply going to creating here the state of the final score. Let's say final score. Now this final score is consisting 4 things. Okay, 4 things. One is called the relevant score. Let's say state of let's say relevant score, and then plus state of the grammar score. Let's say grammar score, plus then state of the structure score, and let's say the plus, okay, should be the 1, plus state of the depth score. Now if I combine this all of them, it should be the 1, because we're giving here the final score of the 1. Now in the relevant score, we give it here, let's say 30% of the mark. Let's say 30% of the mark. Let's say 0.3. In the grammar score, let's say I'm going to give it here, let's say 20% of the mark. In the structure score, let's say give it here, let's say 0.2. I mean 20% of them. And from the depth score, let's give it here, let's say 0.3%. Okay, 0.3% for that. And after that, it will giving here one final score for that. Now you can returning here the state. Let's say returning here the state. Now all the value is stored inside our state. That's it. That is how you can creating here our creating node functions. Now we need to creating here our workflow. This is the important one. This is the important one. Let's try to do here our workflow definition. So let's try to go on here. Now what I can do, workflow is nothing but the creating the graph. So this is nothing but the 4 number. Let's say 4 dot. Okay, workflow definitions. Now let's creating here the workflow first, and we know that how can I create the workflow. So let's say state graph, and then to give it here state. Okay, now let's go on the flowchart again. In the flowchart, you can see here it having a start node, then it having the check relevance, check grammar, analyze the structure, evaluate the depth, and calculate the final score. And all of the node is connected to each other, each of the values. And this analyze structure is connected to this, okay? And also this check relevant, you can check relevant, you can see this is go from here and also here, okay? That's when this is actually connected to this one is connected to this one is connected to this and this one, and this one is connected to all of them, okay? This is called the conditional edges. I mean, if it is having some conditions, let's say if the topic is relevant, we can check in the grammar, analyze, and the evaluate path. Otherwise, if it is not, if the topic is not relevant, so why should you give the answer, why should you give the score, right? Like that. Now let's try to creating here out. Okay, so now let's creating the note. So let's say workflow dot add note. Okay, let's say add note. So our first note is called the check relevant. Okay, let's say check underscore relevant. Then we can copy this out and we can paste it to here. Okay, then what we have, we need to copy this out for the 5 times. Okay, the check relevant. Then after that we have the check grammar. Okay, check grammar. Then you can make it as check grammar. Then we have the analysis structure. So let's analyze structure. Then you can copy this out and you can paste it to here. And after that we have the evaluate the depth. Okay, should be the evaluate depth. And then this one is called the calculate the final score. Let's say calculate the final score. So you can copy this out, you can paste it to here, you can copy this out and you can paste it to here. Now we're creating here the note. Now we're creating here the edges as well. Now you can see that in our graph we having some conditional edges. So let's creating here the conditional edges. Let's say workflow dot add conditional edges. In the project number 1 we just adding here the edges. Now it having the conditional edges. Now let's say I first checking here. Let's say I simply going to creating here on edges from the check relevance to the check grammar. Okay, check relevant to the check grammars. But before that I need to checking that if the relevant score is more than 50%, then we can calculate the final score. If it is not, we can calculate the final score directly. We don't need to go to the analyze structure or the evaluate the depth. Let's say if the topic is not relevant, so what I can do is simply going to give it here the 0 marks. It is failed, right? So what I can do is simply going to give it here. Let's say check. Let's say really bends. Okay. So let's say we're simply going to creating here on conditional edges from check relevance to the check grammar. Now let's say check grammar. Now the condition is if the relevant score is greater than 50%, then we can checking the grammar. So you can using here the lambda functions. So let's say lambda, because you need to taking all of the value from here lambda. So lambda, let's say x dot. Now inside that, if the x, because it is stored inside the f right now, the relevant score okay, is greater than 0.5, then we can check in the grammar. We are not checking the grammar. Otherwise we simply going to returning here our final score. I mean this calculate final score. That means 0. Okay, 0. थोड़ा हिंदी में आपको समझ लेता हूँ, तो इसलिए मुझे थोड़ा फ्लो चार्ट में जाना पड़ेगा. देखो भाई, सीधा साधा देखो, यहाँ पर एक स्टार्ट नोट है, एक एंड नोट है. तो यहाँ पर देखो स्टार्ट नोट इससे कनेक्टेड है, और इस नोट इससे कनेक्टेड, इस नोट इससे कनेक्टेड, इस नोट इससे कनेक्टेड, इस नोट इससे कनेक्टेड, देन द एंड. बट द प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पर क्या है, देखो यहाँ पर चेक रिलेवेंट जो है ना, वो कनेक्टेड किससे है. देखो चेक ग्रामर से है, स्ट्रक्चर से है, और इवैल्यूएट डेप्थ भी है, इसके बाद कैलकुलेट फाइनल स्कोर के साथ भी है. देखो मेरा रिलेवेंट स्कोर 0 है, तब तो मैं ग्रामर को चेक करूंगा ना. देखो रिलेवेंट स्कोर 50% से आप है, इसके बाद मैं चेक करूंगा, ग्रामर चेक करना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो स्टूडेंट फेल है. देखो तो इसके बाद देखो ग्रामर भी चेक करना पड़ेगा। देखो ग्रामर चेक करने के बाद देखता है ग्रामर में थोड़ा गलत है, लेट्स से 50% के नीचे है, तो इसके लिए मैं स्ट्रक्चर देख के क्या करूँ, लेकिन ग्रामर ही गलत है यहाँ पर, तो इसलिए सीधा मैं फाइनल स्कूल में चला जाऊंगा। और देखो स्ट्रक्चर जब चेक करने गया, देखो डेप्थ में कुछ भी नहीं है यहाँ पर, तो सीधा मैं यहाँ पर चला आऊंगा ना बस। इसका मतलब है यहाँ पर देखो टॉपिक रेलेवेंट होना चाहिए, रेलेवेंट का स्कोर ज्यादा होना चाहिए, रेलेवेंट का स्कोर जब ज्यादा होगा तब मैं यहाँ पर जाऊंगा, नहीं तो मैं सीधा चला जाऊंगा यहाँ पर। इसलिए इसको बोलते हैं कंडीशनल एजेस। और ग्रामर सही होगा तो इसका बाद तो हम स्ट्रक्चर को चेक करेंगे ना, ग्रामर भी सही नहीं है तो सीधा बोलो भाई तुम फेल हो गए बस। ओके सो नाउ लेट्स गेटिंग हियर द ऑल ऑफ देम। सो क्या करेंगे हम यहाँ से कॉपी करेंगे। तो क्या किया हमने, फर्स्ट चेक रेलेवेंट को चेक किया, इसके बाद हम ग्रामर को चेक करेंगे, ग्रामर को चेक करेंगे। और ग्रामर किससे कनेक्टेड है, ग्रामर एनालाइज स्ट्रक्चर से कनेक्टेड है, तो यहाँ पर भेज दो भाई, भेज दिया बस। नहीं तो क्या करेंगे भाई यहाँ पर, बस सीधा साधा बोलो भाई तुम फेल हो गए हो। इसके बाद हम इसको कॉपी कर रहे 2 बार। इसके बाद क्या करेंगे, इसके बाद एनालाइज स्ट्रक्चर जो है ना उसके साथ हमको रिटर्न करना पड़ेगा, इसके साथ मेरा ये बोलो डेफ्ट कनेक्टेड है, तो डेफ्ट को यहाँ पर दे दिया, यहाँ पर दे दिया बस। इसके बाद क्या है हमारा द लास्ट एजेस है, तो लास्ट एजेस क्या है हमारा, ये बोला डेफ्थ है, डेफ्थ दे दिया यहाँ पर। और अदरवाइज क्या है, डेफ्थ के बाद क्या है ना कैलकुलेट स्कोर है, तो इसके लिए हमको यहाँ पर आपको कैलकुलेट नहीं करना पड़ेगा, तो बस सीधा साधा इसको यहाँ से भेज दो बस। नाउ इसके बाद क्या करेंगे हम, वी सिंपली गोइंग टू क्रिएटिंग हियर आवर entry point, because our entry point is nothing but the check elements. So what you can do is simply going to creating here the conditional edges. Okay, so grammar भी सही होगा, इसके बाद हम next में जाएंगे, that's why it's called the conditional edges. Okay, now we're simply going to creating here the entry point. Let's say workflow dot set entry point. Let's say set entry point. So हमारा entry point क्या है, which is our entry point, our entry point is nothing called the check relevance. Okay, check relevance यहाँ पर दे दिया मैंने। Then I'm simply going to set the exit point as well, because exit point is nothing but our calculate final score. So let's adding here workflow dot at edges. So that's our at edges, and then we can give it here our calculate the final score. That's our calculate final score, and after that we make it as the end. That's end. That's it. Now we're simply going to compile our workflow. Let's workflow dot compile. Okay, and now we're simply going to creating it inside a application. Let's app. Well, that is ready right now. Now we can visualize this one. So that's our next one. That's called the visualize the workflow. It's our 5 number. Okay, so you can simply go into visualize this one. So you can taking one text, and let's say this is nothing but our 5 number, and then visualize the workflow. Now we can using here the display method to actually visualize this one. So let's say display, then we can using here the image, and after that you can give it here app dot get graph. If you're exporting graph, okay, if you're exporting graph and tree, you can easily creating here any kind of applications using this one, because LangGraph is nothing but itself a graph if you're mastering graph. Okay, so that's why मैं बोलता हूँ भाई इंजीनियर तो बन गए हो लेकिन डीएस नहीं आता तो इंजीनियर भी नहीं हो तुम। मुझे लगता है, right? If you know the DS well, you are an engineer. You are a computer science engineer. Okay, otherwise not. I don't consider them as engineer. Sorry for that. Okay, so the graph is generated. You can see here the same graph that you see in the presentation slide, start node, and you can see here the check relevance, the check grammar, analyze the structure, you know the depth, and the calculate the final score as well as the end block. Okay, now what I can do is simply go into creating here our next things, that's called the essay grading function, so that it will give the grading, because it's also testing it out, right? Now what I can do is simply going to taking one text, let's say taking one text, and then this is nothing but our 6. Okay, so let's say hashtag 6 dot then I'm going to add it here, this one. Okay, this is a grading function that you're to creating this out. Now let's give in one function name, let's call def, let's say grade, let's say essay, and it is taking nothing but one essay as the input, let's say string. and then I'm simply going to returning here one dictionary, because if I see our node function is returning here one dictionary as well. You can see it returning me one state of dictionary. Okay, so that's why you need to actually using here one dictionary on format on here. So let's try to making it as a dictionary. Then after that, I'm simply going to initialize this state. Let's say initial state, and inside this state we're simply going to passing here the state. Now inside the state, I need to giving here my all of the state is coming from our application. So let's say essay is nothing but our essay. Then our state is called the relevant score. Let's say really base score is nothing but let's say 0.0 by default it should be the 0. Okay, then our the grammar score, let's say grammar, okay, grammar score, grammar underscore score, let's say 0.0. Then we're simply going to give it here our the structure score and the depth score as well. Let's say structure uh, score, so it's nothing but the 0.0. Then let's give it the depth score. Let's say depth underscore score. The score is nothing but the 0.0 is the initial value for that. And after that, let's make it the final score is nothing but our 0 as well. Let's say 0.0. So that's our initial state. Now we simply going to uh, using here the result. Let's say result equal to app dot invoke. Let's say invoke, and inside that you can passing here our initial state. Let's say initial state that you define on here. I mean, initial state is nothing but our 0. Okay, all of the value are nothing but 0. And after that, is simply going to be returning here the result. Let's say return the result. That's it. So that's our getting function. Now let's testing here the pipeline. Okay, so let's testing the pipeline. That's the number 7, the final one. That's a 7 number. Let's say testing. Okay, okay, now let's try to testing this out our pipeline. So for that, to giving here one sample essay, as well as we need to using here based on the grade. So what I can do, let's say we have initialize a variable called, let's say sample essay, and here to giving here one essay. So after that, I am simply going to pass it inside our grade score. I mean, grade is the as a functions, and inside that into passing here this sample underscore essay. So I am simply going to give it here one essay. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it here this sample essay. Okay, so I'm going to paste it to you here. This is nothing but the impact of generative AI on programming society. Okay, or you can say let's say at programming society, like that. So what I can do is simply going to running this out, but before that it also store it inside a variable. Let's call result. Okay, and see we got any error or not. Okay, and we get one error messages on here. That's called the relevance score is not defined. Okay, so I need to go up and I need to checking here the relevance score. Okay, it should be the relevance score, and this relevance score is not defined. Okay, it not be relevance score, it can be the check grammar. So that's why it will give me this kind of error. Okay, it should be the analyze structure, right? So we need to give it to here uh, should be the relevance score, and it should be the grammar score. Okay, it's not an analyze structure. Okay, it should be the relevance score is nothing but our is coming from here. Okay, okay, I don't want to mistake. This is the relevance score. Okay, relevance score. Then this is the grammar score. Okay, that's why this is the grammar score, and this is not a structure grammar score, because based on the grammar score you need to defining this one. Okay, I don't want mistake on here. Structure score this one. Okay, structure score, and then this is nothing but the depth. Okay, yeah, I told the mistake just because this score is defined based on the score you actually get it from the calculate final score, but unfortunately I give it here the function name. Okay, that's my mistake. Okay, let's try to running this out, but the graph is usually same, because it will indicating here the same thing on here. Okay, graph is obviously same because we're just adding here all of the values. Okay, so what I can do is simply going to give it to here and try to checking it now that which kind of a score you got. Okay, now you can see it is generating the score based on the result. Yeah, it executed. So let's go on here again and see just why this error coming up, because we're checking the grammar based on the relevance score. If the relevance score is nothing but the uh, uh, greater than 0.5%, then you can checking this one. Okay, so that's why I do this mistake, just because of we copy in the past. So that's why I don't copy in the past uh, on here. Okay, try to actually write it down in the own, so that you can checking here all of the uh, mistake. Okay, uh, it's better writing this down, and that's why writing all of the template, all of the code in my own, because uh, it's really the bad thing to copy the one code another again. Okay, so now I'm simply going to printing it out. Let's try to printing here our values, just like the essay score and the relevance score. So I can print it out. Let's say printing here the f string, and let's say I'm going to make this, let's say final essay score, let's say essay and score, and then I'm going to passing here result, and based on the result I have the final score. Okay, I have the final score. So from the result I can access here the final score, you can see. Okay, I can access the final score, and I can give it here the pointing as well. Okay, if you wanted to give, let's say 0.2f, you can give it to here, and then I can using here the backslash n to go to the next line, and then I can copy this out, but I already doing this copy pasting on here, you can see. Okay, and then this is nothing but our relevance score. It should be the really relevance score, and this is nothing but our the grammar score, let's say grammar score. Then this is nothing but our the structure score, let's say structure score. Then our depth score, let's try to give it to here depth score. Okay, depth score. Then what I can do is simply going to making it as I call a relevance score. Let's say relevance underscore score. That we have the grammar score. Let's say GRA grammar score. Then we have the structure score. Let's say structure score. Okay, structure score. Then you have the depth score. Let's say depth underscore score. Let's start running this out, and he got any or not, and he got 88% mark. Relevant score is nothing but 1. That's mean 100 to 100, it's relevant to this one. And generative AI has revolutionized the programming landscape, driving profound changes in how software is developed. And you can see here in calculations the rise of Gen AI, the generative AI accelerated, all the things it actually include on here. And then grammar score is 95%, and the structure is 90%. Depth is nothing but 70%. We can also go more depth in this Gen AI at Programming Society. Okay, so this is how the final SES score is actually calculated. Okay, so this is how the essay grading system actually work. Now we're simply going to creating here the grading applications. It will be better I can give the homework for this one, uh, the grading applications. Okay, let's say homework. It's your homework to creating here the grading application, because video बहुत लंबा हो चुका है. It's your homework as well. Let's say grading interface. Okay, interface. So that's your homework to creating this out. Okay, let's summarize this one full applications in the Hindi as well. तो हमने यहाँ पर क्या क्या किया है, क्योंकि हमको एक ऐसे ग्रेडिंग सिस्टम बढ़ाना है, इसलिए हमको 4 थॉट प्रोसेस को हमको यहाँ पर स्टेट है उसको मेंटेन करके चलना पड़ेगा. बस फर्स्ट है कंटेंट रिलेवेंस, हमको चेक करना पड़ेगा कि कंटेंट रिलेवेंस है और नहीं. इसके बाद ग्रामर आर्टिकल को चेक करना पड़ेगा, स्ट्रक्चर को चेक करना पड़ेगा, डेप्थ को एनालिसिस करना पड़ेगा. तो हमने क्या किया, लैंगचेन कोर ग्रॉक को इंस्टॉल किया, कम्युनिटी एंड लैंग्राफ को इंस्टॉल कर लिया यहाँ पर. इसके बाद हमने यहाँ पर टाइप डिट को इंपोर्ट कर लिया टाइपिंग मॉड्यूल से, क्योंकि हमको स्टेट क्रिएट करना है. तो स्टेट क्रिएट करने के लिए हमको स्टेट के नाम, इसके बाद उसका डेटा टाइप मुझे मेंशन करना पड़ेगा बस. इसके बाद स्टेट ग्राफ को यहाँ से इंपोर्ट किया. देन चैट प्रॉम्प्ट टेम्पलेट को, इसके बाद मैं मेड ड्रॉ मेथड सो दैट आई कैन ड्रॉ हियर द ग्राफ. ओके, देन इसके बाद मैंने रेगुलर एक्सप्रेशन को यहाँ पर इंपोर्ट किया, क्योंकि हमको स्कोर जो है ना, जो न्यूमेरिक स्कोर है उसको हमको स्टार्ट करना पड़ेगा इसलिए. इसके बाद मैंने यहाँ पर एक थोड़ा पाइपलाइन क्रिएट कर लिया. 7 पाइपलाइन हम एक्चुअली फॉलो करेंगे. दिस इज द गोट प्रोसेस टू एक्चुअली फॉलोइंग दिस पाइपलाइन. इसके बाद हमने क्या किया, स्टेट को डिफाइन किया. ऐसे है स्कोर है जिसको तो फ्लोटिंग पॉइंट में नंबर में होगा, ग्रामर, स्ट्रक्चर, डेप्थ, इसके बाद फाइनल स्कोर. इसके बाद लैंग्वेज मॉडल को इनिशियलाइज कर दिया. इसके बाद ग्रेट नोट फंक्शन क्रिएट किया. जो यहाँ पर चेक रिलेवेंट जो फंक्शन है वहाँ पर चेक करेगा रिलेवेंट है और नहीं टॉपिक। इसके बाद एक न्यूमेरिक स्कोर हमको देगा, तो उसको हमको स्टार्ट करना पड़ेगा इस मेथड के जरिए। इसके बाद इसलिए हमको इन्वोक किया, इसके बाद ट्राई एंड एक्सेप्ट लगा दिया। तो सेम थिंग यहाँ पर ग्रामर के लिए भी ही, स्ट्रक्चर के लिए भी ही, इसके बाद डेप्थ के लिए भी ही। इसके बाद हमने क्या किया, जो सारे भी एक्चुअली स्कोर है इसका साथ 30% मैंने दे दिया स्कोर के साथ, रिलेवेंस के स्कोर के साथ, 20% मार्क्स दे दिया मैंने ग्रामर के साथ, 20% मैंने दे दिया स्ट्रक्चर के साथ, और 30% दे दिया मैंने डेप्थ स्कोर के साथ। इसके बाद मैंने क्या किया, एक वर्क फ्लो क्रिएट किया, क्योंकि ये वर्क फ्लो हमें फॉलो करना है, तो इसलिए ऐसे वर्क फ्लो हमने क्रिएट किया है। तो हमने चेक किया वैल्यू स्कोर जो है ना 50% के ऊपर है, तो हमने चेक रिलेवेंट स्कोर को हम यहाँ पर ऐड करेंगे। इसके बाद हम ग्रामर को चेक करेंगे। इसके बाद नहीं तो हम ग्रामर का चेक करेंगे, ग्रामर चेक करेंगे, नहीं तो हमने जो कैलकुलेट फाइनल स्कोर है उसको जस्ट रिटर्न कर देंगे बस। इसका बाद क्या किया, सेम थिंग ग्रामर को चेक किया, ग्रामर को चेक करने के बाद हम चला जाएंगे एनालिसिस स्ट्रक्चर पे, और स्ट्रक्चर को चेक करने के बाद हम चले जाएंगे डेप्थ पे। तो डेप्थ के बाद सीधा चले जाएंगे हम फाइनल स्कोर पे, क्योंकि डेप्थ पे चला है इसका मतलब कैलकुलेट हो चुका है। तो इसके बाद हमने यहाँ पर एंट्री पॉइंट दे दिया। इसके बाद इसको जो एग्जिट पॉइंट है उसको भी हमने यहाँ पर ऐड कर दिया ग्राफ की तरह। इसके बाद हमने इसको एग्जीक्यूट कर लिया बस। इसके बाद हमने एक ग्रेडिंग फंक्शन बनाया जो जीरो शुरू से सब कुछ जीरो है। इसके बाद हमने एक यहाँ पर सैंपल ऐसे दे दिया। इसके बाद इसको स्कोर वगैरह कैलकुलेट कर लिया बस। तो तुम्हारा होमवर्क क्या है, आप लोग को एक रेडियो इंटरफेस क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा। इसके लिए हम तुम एक काम कर सकते हो, मेरा मल्टीवर्स सीरीज में जो JNAR प्रोजेक्ट का है 51 52 जो प्रोजेक्ट है, ट्रैवल प्लानर एप्लीकेशंस, इसके बाद कस्टमर सपोर्ट एजेंट एप्लीकेशंस, वो तुम फॉलो कर सकते हो, क्योंकि मोस्टली सेम है। ओके, इतना आपको तकलीफ भी नहीं होगा रेडियो एप्लीकेशन बनाने के लिए। सो आई होप सो यू गाइस एक्चुअली enjoy this course. I mean, enjoy this one short video for the LangGraph. In the next one, I am trying to creating here a videos regarding the LangChain as well. If you need this out, just comment below. And if you need any scratch video, just like scratch coding and scratch from the transformer or the llama model itself or GPT model from scratch, just comment below. If you like this, if you enjoy this video, just like it, share it with your friends, and because it will also give me the motivations. And better do comment, okay, better do comment. If I need any perfection, if I need anything to resolve, just like my voice, just my speeding issue or my Hindi, anything else, okay, just comment below, okay, because you guys, I like to actually teach others, okay. So that's my passions to do. Okay, so that's it for today now, and hope you enjoy this tutorial again, and thank you and bye bye.